Hey you guys, it's Peter, and I'm back. Of course I'm back. I'm not going anywhere. Boost! I'm YouTube famous now. Available in 2018. The album, Dad AF. Okay, let's get right into this video. I don't think I need the fans so much for this video today. This is a little bit more of a serious topic. And today we're going to discuss John Hill, Jaclyn Hill's ex, finally coming out, breaking the silence, and discussing the real reasons for the divorce, what really happened. There's been a lot of speculation about it. People have wondered now for months and months and months, what's the truth? There's been a lot of rumors. There's been a lot of gossip. And John Hill, in an article yesterday that came out, he did an interview and he discussed the reasons, his real reasons for the divorce. And so I wanted to get on here and I wanted to discuss it today. The whole article was very interesting to me, and on some level, it was a lot about addiction, which is personal to me because I've been sober for 23 years and 11 months. And so the topic of addiction is always, very personal to me, and it's interesting to see how it affects people and how it affects their relationships and things like that. And much of the article was about addiction. The article was really about his new album that he has coming out called Rebirth, and a music video that he put out. I'm going to talk about that in just a second because he actually hired an actress to play Jaclyn in his music video. But I watched the music video. It's pretty profound, and so I want to talk about all of that. I want to read you guys some of the interview because I think it's very, very interesting. I will tell you this, because of the sensitivity of this topic, of discussing somebody's marriage and whatever, I did reach out to Jaclyn and I said, hey, I really want to make this video. I want to be fair to you. Like, I want to try to, just share this information out there, but I want to know if you're okay with that first. She said, hey, do whatever you want to do. Thank you so much for asking me. She congratulated me on almost 24 years of sobriety. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what she said at the end. But I want to get in first and, do this. And when it's a topic like something like that, it is important for me to reach out to the person. And had she not okayed me doing this video, I would not have done the video. So we're going to get into that. I do want to say that on my doorstep, I just received, look at this. Oh my God, I just received the James Charles Morphe palette. So tomorrow or Sunday, I will be doing my unboxing and first impressions as well as a giveaway. I'm doing a giveaway of this as well. So this said palette could be yours. Okay, so let's get right into this. The article came out yesterday and it was on substreammagazine.com. And the article was exclusive. John Hill talks divorce from Jaclyn Hill. Hear new song, Would You Save Me Now? Here. And the music video is linked below in this article. And that's the music video where basically, okay, and I'm going to talk about this at the end because he says something about it. It is really kind of like a reenactment of the end of their marriage. And he hires this actress who he said looks a lot like Jaclyn. I mean, kind of like her hair up in a ponytail and sunglasses. She kind of looks a lot like Jaclyn. I don't know. But it was interesting because in thinking back on some of the pictures that she had put out on her, Instagram and things like that, there were it kind of showed certain scenes that made you think of that. There were photo shoots that were done in there. The music video, I have to tell you, especially as a person in recovery, was really hard to watch. Like, it just was kind of gut-wrenching. And so let's get into this article, and then I will do a little commentary afterwards on it. And it goes in here at the beginning, and it talks about just the album coming out, which is called Rebirth, and it explains all these different, it goes in and talks about his music career and things like that. And then it says, the work for this project started back in 2016 when John joined forces with Spencer Bradham, as well as Tides of Man's Spencer Gill, to begin work on his new album, Rebirth. The end result being one that discusses his struggle with addiction, looking for redemption, and the end of his 9-year marriage to YouTube personality Jaclyn Hill. That last bit there is, in fact, where the conversation between John and I starts, his recent divorce from Jaclyn. There were a lot of rumors going on at that time of what exactly had happened to the seemingly happy couple. Due to respect for one another and having both lived such a public life for a long time, there were no immediate answers given to those who were curious outside of a YouTube video from Jaclyn. And if you remember back then, I think it was at the end of March, they both put out statements on Instagram that were very, very similar, if not identical. No, they weren't identical, but they were very similar, and they had put them out basically saying that we'd gone our separate ways. People were speculating when the divorce had actually occurred. For them to put this statement out, they had been taking pictures, and he discusses it all in this article. By the time we get on the phone, however, John was ready to speak a little more on what was going on to lead to their divorce. He explains that while they were happy for the most part, there was some sort of disconnect once Jaclyn's fame started taking off. Though he pinpoints this as the time that things started souring, he's quick to establish that he doesn't place any of the blame on her. Quotations, nothing against her, I think it had to do with me, John begins. I've had addiction problems since I was 18, and now I'm 5 months clean. A lot of it was just pain I put her through. I could have been a lot better of a husband, and her fame kind of taking off just didn't really help. It made that extravagant life and kind of drug life and material stuff more appealing. In the end, it kind of just became more like roommates and less like husband and wife. I relapsed back in December, and I was keeping it from her for a while, and I knew once I fell back into it, it was inevitable that it would come to the surface at that point. And then he goes in here and he talks about some more. John expresses his desire to want to make the marriage work, but it had gotten to the point where Jaclyn had to let go and gone through grieving process, one that he understands her doing. Something that stuck out to me was his candidness on owning up to his own faults and the role he played in the relationship that ends, which can sometimes be a hard realization to have. There was more than just his relapse, however, in terms of what John feels like he could have done better, as there's a lot of things that seem to come to mind. I definitely feel like besides the relapse, I could have been a lot more attentive. Toward the end, I was so miserable in my own grief and just kind of lost interest and just kind of sat on my phone a lot. I could have been there for her more, and I could have been a better husband. When you're hiding an addiction, it's hard to do anything. It's hard to live. Going on trips and stuff, it's kind of become like, how can I hide this, he shares. Definitely could have been overall better. I could have shown her that I cared more. And this whole part to me is very, very interesting. You know, I had said back then that, you know, that a lot of times in situations, especially with couples, that there, you know, is an addiction problem, that sometimes like a counselor or somebody will say, you know, like have some kind of contract in place, like if you use again, this is it. Like they have to have like some boundaries, because how do you continue to go on and do this, you know, with emotional abuse and things like that over and over and over and over again? And the reality is, you know, that when I was in my own active addiction, and I also have a mother that got sober 6 months after I did, so I grew up in an alcoholic home as well. And she was sober for 12 years and 11 months before she passed away. So we had a great relationship towards the end. But, you know, like even in that, I didn't have any idea how much I had really, really affected my family at the time that I was using. He goes in here and he says, all of us at some point have been caught in a lie where you find yourself trying to remember what you previously lied about in order to keep the story straight. This is a challenging task for most, but when you live in the public eye, you're lying to your partner first and foremost, but additionally, you are attempting to keep up your appearances. We had this public image and everyone looked at us like this perfect married couple, and we were both fighting to keep that, and we hoped it would work out, and fighting to keep that perfect image kind of played into this. We have to work this out if we divorce. She talked about it a lot. I never did. I was terrified of life without her, with her doing that. I felt like it was the end of the world, John shares. He mentions that he also found out about their divorce and rehab, and paints a visual of coming back home to find his belongings being moved out. While he recognizes that he was 1 minute too late, as he puts it, since he was finally ready to be the guy that she needed, he knows it was for the best in the end. It's crazy because now the time has passed. It was the best for both of us. I've gained so much knowledge from the pain, from the drugs and the divorce. Everything has just kind of like made me who I am now. Through all this, John has found himself in a better place mentally, and he goes back and he says, if I went back to that life, it still would have been a lie. Even with how hard I wanted it to work, it just would have been inevitable that it wouldn't have worked out, he explains. But still, the big driving force behind setting this divorce in motion seemed to be the relapse. John is very open about his experiences with drugs and his addiction, and so when I asked what drove him to relapse in the first place, he points that the pressure that comes to the life he and Jaclyn were living. It's just like all I've really known, hiding things and putting on a front and putting on a mask. I felt compelled to be the center of attention and be funny, and I felt like I could only really do that if I do these drugs. If I'm not going to do them, I'm going to be boring, he describes. This is real interesting to me. I don't know, like, you know, I think at first of all, before anybody wants to pass any kind of judgment, 5 months sober is like a baby, okay? Like, I mean, how you're handling the world, how you're handling honesty and things like that, it's like a completely refreshing new world, right? So I understand his kind of like naivete response to things, but even though he's taking a lot of responsibility for things, it still seems to me a little bit like he's like, well, I found out about, you know, the divorce and rehab, I found out this, I found out that, you know? And I don't know, I think it's hard in those situations, you know, especially when you consider like marriages and things. And one of the things is that, you know, like, I don't think that we have, like I said before, any idea of how much we truly affect family and loved ones around us. And they say for every addict and alcoholic, there are 5 to 10 people that are directly affected by their using. However, it's very much so worth noting that, much like earlier toward the beginning of our conversation, while he's referencing a certain aspect of the relationship, he doesn't put any of the blame on Jaclyn herself. Eventually, some people said it was because she was drinking, and I don't think it was. She doesn't drink a lot. People, any kind of party lifestyle, people are going to say, oh, that's what it was. But she could have been completely sober, and I know that. Knowing me in my past, I would have found my way back to that. So he puts no blame on her whatsoever for relapsing or getting back to what she was doing. And there were a lot of allegations back then, and I said I thought that was real cruel, you know, that there were a lot of allegations that her drinking led to this or whatever. If an addict or an alcoholic wants to use, an addict or an alcoholic is going to use. You cannot blame that on somebody else. So then he goes in here and he says all this kind of stuff. And hold on a second. This was, as you can safely imagine, not an easy consensus to come through. There are a lot of people out there who struggle with addiction and a lot of others who struggle with going through a divorce. So putting those two together at once is no easy thing to overcome. There was a point where he was using his divorce as a reason to get high, and this wasn't something he was able to overcome until he went into rehab earlier this year, which marked his 3rd time in his life doing so. Ultimately, it was doing this stint that John was able to find his new purpose in life. Well, I went to treatment 5 times. So, I mean, you sometimes have to go to treatment a lot. You sometimes have to, like, start things over and start them over and start them over, you know? And it's really sad that the expense of his addiction and his actions were this marriage, you know? When I reached out to Jaclyn, she said, you know, yeah, do what you want to do. And she said something to the effect of, you know, people are going to believe what they want to believe anyway. And she said, but for her and her family, it was very difficult for them to read this article. She said not everything was 100% the truth. And, you know, it's interesting when she said that to me, because I thought back on when I read the book Beautiful Boy, and I don't know if you've read this book, and it's now just come out as a movie, and I haven't seen it yet. I really want to. But it's about a father's journey with his son's addiction. And I read the book a couple years ago, and when I read the book, I just had this overwhelming, hearing a father's point of view. And my father was my chief enabler. He was also my chief support system. He is the reason I'm sitting here today. He got my ass into treatment. You know, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my dad. And I remember when I, you know, finished that book, I called my dad and I said, have you read this book? Like, I have this book for you that I think would be good. He goes, oh, I read it when it first came out. I said, you did? And he goes, oh yeah, I read all the addiction books. And I said, well, what did you think about it? And he goes, it was painful. It was exactly what it was, Peter. And you know, like, I knew I had affected my family. I knew I had affected the loved ones around me. I didn't have any idea the extent to which my use had affected them. Because people would say to me things like, you're drugging and you're using, or you're drinking and you're using is a problem. And I'd say, it's a problem for you. It's not a problem for me, see? And they would say, okay, well, it's affecting us. No, it's not really affecting you. It's not. And in retrospect, what I know, and even though, like, I've been sober for such a long period of time and I know that I affected my family, I had no idea the capacity of pain that my using put on them. Even if it was just them sitting at home worried about where I was or what I was doing or if they could trust me or not. Like, that kind of stress that you put on somebody. So, you know, to read an article like this, I think from Jaclyn's point of view, like she said, like, you know, it wasn't 100% exactly how it was. And it was much, much worse. You know, I'm sure that it had to have been painful for her. She did say that at this point, she just wants to move on. And you know, I think that for him, like, putting this album out is maybe some closure. And I also hope that for her, it's some closure, you know? Even when we don't agree with how somebody sees something 100% or whatever, you know, maybe to allow just a little bit of ownership of that will help us move on. And I hope that for her. I hope that she can, you know, move on. I mean, hey, yesterday she put out her Key Sunglasses, a collaboration, and I'm real excited about that. And I actually congratulated her on that at first because I'm like, I love Key Sunglasses. And so Jaclyn's got all these new things. You know, she's dating somebody else and she's ready to move forward. And, you know, she's ready to have some new happy things in her life. That doesn't mean that she didn't love John, and that doesn't mean that John didn't love her. It just means that at the end, it wasn't working for them anymore. And I think that sometimes, you know, we want to get really angry, and we want to stir shit up, and we want to blame people, and, you know, and we want to gossip about it, and it's got to be about this, and it's got to be about that. And at the end of the day, it was a married couple that were greatly affected by addiction, and it just ate the relationship alive. And it's very sad that that happens. And, you know, as I'm making this video, there are hundreds of thousands of people out there right now that are affected by that. I heard a statistic the other day that it's something of like the tens of millions of people in the United States that are actively affected by addiction in our country every day. And so many people that are dying from it, you know, and it's really, really sad. And the reality is maybe the blessing at the end of all of it is that Jaclyn has been able to move on, and she is becoming a new person as a result of that, and having happy things in her life and new relationships and new experiences. And John has moved on as well, and now he has this album, you know, for some closure. I'm going to link the article below. I think it was an interesting article. If you like John anyway, it has a lot of his stuff about his band in there and all other kinds of stuff. And I will also link the music video below. I will tell you, it is painful to watch, especially when you read the rest of the article. He goes in here and he talks in the article about how they specifically hired an actress to look like Jaclyn and to act out the role of Jaclyn in this music video. So when you watch a music video, and I think this probably was maybe what was hard for her and her family, is you're actually watching his portrayal of the end of that relationship and how addiction affected it, and the hiding of pills and the hiding of, you know, drugs and substances like that. It's painful to watch. So I wish them both the best. I wish them, you know, both blessings as they go forward. And I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.